All right, in today's video on our OTL 600 package build, we are going to be doing some fuel system upgrades with Radium Engineering. In our last video, we got the entire long block dressed, ready to drop into the car. We have our front half fuel system here in place with our off-the-line performance rails and our custom-made fuel lines. Now we are going to get fuel from the back in the gas tank up to the front. We are going to use Radium Engineering's dual pump hanger with some Walbro 525 fuel pumps, 2 of them, and we're also going to be using an I-wire dual pump hardwire kit. So it's going to be a long video. It's going to be extremely detailed. The fuel system stuff in these GDs can be sort of complex, especially when you're doing dual pump with a hardwire kit. So I'm going to try to be as thorough as I can. And if you have any questions, hit them up in the comments. Let's get into the install. This is from Radium Engineering. This is our dual Walbro fuel pump hanger, and that's exactly what pumps we're going to be using. We're going to be using dual Walbro 285s. These are the Hellcat pump, so they are plenty of fuel for what this car is going to be making. And to get things started, we are going to get our second fuel pump harness here added on. So out of the box, they ship it ready for a single pump. So all you have to do to add the provision for the secondary pump is just put these 2 wires onto these 2 leads here. And it actually says it right here, pump 2, power and ground. So we have those there. And then you use the provided nuts to fasten the cables down. Be sure that the leads, when you tighten them down, they don't move and touch each other, because you can have a short and you'll blow fuses. So now that we have that added, we also need to take out this, I don't know which way is the best way to show you, this plug here. We need to get rid of that and add in the second barbed fitting so that we can add another fuel pump. I'm just gonna turn that out. I've used a lot of these Radium fuel system hangers, and I have yet to be disappointed with one. They all fit fantastically and they work really, really well. With this install, like I mentioned, we're also going to be using the I-wire dual pump hardwire kit. With that, you can opt for a switched secondary pump or to just have them run both all the time. I opted for the switched one because if you're running 2 of these pumps all the time, they're going to create a lot of heat, and we don't want to superheat our fuel. We want to keep it nice and cool. We'll just tighten this barbed end down. All right, now we are ready to set our pumps in. To do that, we're going to need to disassemble the basket here a little bit. Set those fasteners over there. And I believe there's a couple more on the back side, yeah. That set out of the way. Now we're going to loosen up these hold downs just a little bit. Don't need to fully remove them. We just need to give some space so the pumps can slide in and out smoothly. Sort of like that. Then I'm going to take each of our pumps, and Radium uses these really cool hoses that are heat shrinked almost, but you just kind of shove them on and put a crimp on, and they don't leak, even though they definitely seem like they would, but they don't. So that's going to go on there. Then we're going to get our second pump, which is in this box. There we go. Okay, then they include these nice little fuel hose clamps. These up a little bit. I probably should have put these on the bottom before I put that crimp on, but it's all right. We can get this around. Okay, and the way that I like to position these is I like to get it way down on the barb and kind of tuck the edge of the clamp between the pump. There we go. So see how there's this little groove here? I like to set the pump or the clamp right there. That way it's nice and out of the way.
What groove?
Just this little groove right here between where the wires terminate and the outlet of the pump. Just that little groove right there. Okay, got that one on. Now we'll do the second. It's also important that you use these supplied style clamps anytime you're doing fuel hose work. The only two acceptable clamps that you should be using on fuel systems are these and those permanent squeeze type clamps that we used earlier on the AN breather conversion. Those are the only ones you should be using on fuel system. Worm clamps can cut into the hoses and they'll leak and you'll lose fuel pressure, and that can blow up your engine. So don't skip out on clamps. Get some quality clamps. So before you install the pumps, you need to remove these hold downs all the way. I thought that you could just slip them through, but you do need to remove them fully to get the pumps all the way in. And what we can do, we'll get these wires out of the way. Set off to the side. We can lay one in right here. It's going to sort of sit like so. Something like that. Oh, same deal here. Get out of the way, dude. Okay, then we can put these hold downs back on. Okay, so it's going to sit something like that. I'm going to leave these loose for now because we still need to be able to rotate the pumps just to make sure we get everything in place exactly how it needs to be. The way that the radium hanger works is actually pretty neat too. It works very similar to a factory setup where you have your return port here coming straight down this tube, and it's going to go through this venturi to draw fuel from the other saddle while also draining the return fuel right back into this little holder here that's going to sort of act like a surge tank almost. It's going to prevent a lot of sloshing. Okay, now we can take these hoses, slip our clamps over them first this time. Get this slid down. And then we will get these pushed onto our ports. Okay. So now the fuel hoses are on and they're clamped in, so we will be getting good fuel delivery up to the top of the hanger here. Now it is time to get our fuel filter socks on, and then we can get everything hard bolted down and get it ready to put in. So this is probably the most tedious part of any of these installs. The actual fuel pump sock hold downs can kind of be a pain in the butt to get put in place sometimes, but I have a couple little tricks up my sleeve on how to get these things in without wanting to just throw it in the garbage. So I'm going to get these pumps positioned so that the inlet of the pump is facing straight down. Then I'm going to tighten this down a little bit to hold it in place. And while I'm at it, I'll throw in the rest of our fasteners on the back. All right, now that the pumps are in and they're held down nice and tight, let's get these socks on. So what I meant earlier about it being kind of a pain in the butt is these little lockdown holders right here. They're very, very small, and they don't give you any extras. So if you lose one, you're kind of screwed. But if you have a set of 90-degree pliers, they will help put these pumps on, or pump socks on, a lot. I'm sure that there's other methods that I just haven't learned yet, but it's just kind of the way I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my 90-degree angle pliers. Always, always, always do this next step. When you're putting these hold downs on, always do it over a bench. Don't do it over here, you know, in your lap or something like that, because if you drop it and it rolls off, like I said, this thing is, I mean, they're really, really small. So that's what we're working with right there. And I've lost them before, and it's, trust me, it's very easy. So they are directional. You'll notice they have these little lock tabs here that sort of face up. So we're going to take these, just sort of try to get them on there flat, like so.
What direction faces what?
So you'll notice it has this little lip on it that faces up. That's going to face the bottom of the pump, while the smooth side faces the pump itself. So then you're going to take these 90-degree angle pliers. You're going to try to straddle this stud right here. You're going to try to straddle that so you're only putting pressure on the outside of the hold downs. Okay, just like that. All right, so kind of see how it slapped down on there and those tabs folded up. Now it should keep those from being able to slide off. So we're just going to repeat that process one more time. Now both of those are on. Socks are in place, they're locked down, so now we shouldn't have any media or anything going through the pumps. Now we can kind of fold these up out of the way and slide our basket back on. There we go. I'm just kind of lightly taking my screwdriver here and just shoving this sock up into the basket without tearing it. Now we can get these bolts put into place. I have to persuade it a little bit, but okay. Got those on. And we need to get these on. I recommend dual pump hangers. Basically, anytime you're trying to make over 500 horsepower, you can put a single 525 in a Subaru and it'll get you to around 550 or so, but you're probably at the limits of that fuel pump capacity. And I always tell people to overbuild your fuel system just a little bit. That way, as the car ages, you won't run into an issue where you're not gonna have enough fuel capacity. So we got our fuel hoses on and those are tight. Everything flows smoothly, nothing's gonna kink, and we have our connectors in, so everything is ready to drop in at this point, other than we need the fuel level sensor, and that is going to come out of the factory hanger, so we need to get that out of the car. So let's get into that. Okay, so we are going to take the back seat out here. There's just two 12mm bolts holding it down in the front, and I'm so excited to see how clean the underside is. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Dude, look at how clean it is under there. Look at that. You could eat off of that. So that's the only piece of junk we got down under here, and I don't even know what it is. Usually you'll find Lego pieces, straw wrappers, all sorts of stuff under here. So we're going to take all these fasteners out that hold the backing to the rear seat down. This one. Okay. Then we also need to get this guy here, which is a 14. And what I usually do is just kind of set this up on top of the rear window decking there. Okay, then we need to pull this out here. That's going to allow us to raise the seat up. And Richard, if you'd be so kind, could you just pick up the seat just sort of like this? Yep, and then give it a nudge forward. There we go. Fold this back up. All right, so next up, we got to remove these back seat support bars here. Those are 12 millimeters. This bar can come over here. Okay, we got that. Now I'm going to do my best not to break these pop clips because we need to get this panel off as well. Thankfully I have some replacements if they do break. Next up here, I'm going to remove these 4 Phillips head screws that are covering up the fuel pump hanger. All right, now try to keep the foam intact. Stuff tends to dry out with age, so sometimes it's hard to keep it nice. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. All right, give a little. Not too bad. This is probably the cleanest one I've ever seen. It's definitely the least rusty. All right, first thing we're going to do, we're going to disconnect this connector here. Get that off. And then we will take all of our fuel lines loose. Vapor hose clamp off. Quick little tech tip here. If you're messing around with hoses that have been on there for a long time, rather than just shoving it off, quick, easy way to get it to break loose is to just twist it like that. And then it should slide right off. Just like so. Just like that. Okay. Now that we got all of our hoses off and out of the way, we're going to need an 8 millimeter socket. We're going to take all these nuts loose. Okay, now with the pocket screwdriver, before you go lifting up on the hanger, there's this little tab here that I believe holds some of the hoses out of the way. We're going to pull that out of the way and then lift the whole hanger assembly up. Push it forward towards the front of the car. Tuck that that tab down, and then just make sure you have everything out of the way. They barely fit through here, so it's kind of a tight squeeze. We're going to take this whole hanger out. This one's fighting me. There we go. Okay. When you're pulling this out, you just got to be careful that you don't break the float off for your fuel level sensor. Now that we have this off, we just need to transfer this hanger assembly over to the radium hanger, and then we can drop the radium hanger down in. The fuel temperature probe out, stamp steel holder that it has. We're going to use that. And then we need to get this loose. Get that loose. And then there's one connector for both the probe and the level sensor. So there we have that little assembly. This is going to get set aside because we're not going to reuse any of this. Now, if I remember right, yeah, this gets bolted right here. So I need my Allen wrench set again. Loosen these Allen bolts. Now we can take this, mount it onto there, and fasten it down. These radium kits are really, really well thought out. They really don't leave any room for error, to be honest. Now we have the float and the temp probe fastened and tight, so this can still move freely. last few things we need to do, we need to cut this connector off. These two yellow wires here are going to be for our temperature probe, and those are going to go up to 2 of these studs, and the black and red wire here are going to get put into these wires, and that is going to be for our level. And again, if you look right here, you have these, the brown and blue, that's level, and then you have temp right here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these supplied zip ties, or a couple of these supplied zip ties, and I'm going to snake them through here, because this is what is going to hold our temp probe in place. So we got that, just like that. Okay, that's just gonna chill there. Now let's get my cutters. And Radium does supply you with all of the necessary connectors that you're gonna need to make these connections. So we have a couple of connectors here, and they actually give you 2 just in case you mess one up, which is actually really nice, because if you're not used to doing this kind of work every day, it is a little intimidating. So. And we have these two small eyelets here, and a couple things of heat shrink. Like I said, we're going to lop this all off here. Okay. I'm actually going to undo some of this stuff here just to give me some more room to work. Okay, and I'm actually going to pull these 2 tan wires all the way through, and we're just gonna zip tie them to these little eyelets right here that are on this. That way we can reach the posts that we need to reach. So let's get these heat shrinks on. And strip these wires back. Oh, I might need smaller strippers. Okay. Now these eyelets are pretty big for this wire. See how it just passes right through like that? Since it's for something that's not super essential, I'm gonna fold this wire here just to get a little bit more material. There, and then we'll crimp that down just like that. Not a bad crimp. I'm gonna go one size down though. Just make sure that we get this really, really tight. There we go. That's a solid crimp there. You know those, you know that torch that Andrew just took?
Yeah.
I need it. Okay, anyway, we'll get the other one done. Get that folded. So I'm just gonna get this heat shrink warm. Before we tile this down, I'm going to bolt it here to the temp probes, and these don't need to be on any certain way. The temperature probe just measures resistance, so it doesn't actually have a polarity. So you can just throw it on whichever of the two you want. And like I said, when you're tightening these down, be sure that you support the wire somehow so that it's not getting shoved into the other stud. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my little pocket pry bar here, just kind of set it over like that. Oh, all right. Maybe I'll set it down. It'll be easier. Anyway, use a screwdriver or something. And these studs do not have to be that tight. They're just going to hold the wires down. All right, now we have our temp probes on, or temp wires on. Now we can take a couple more of these supplied zip ties and fasten them down to the hanger. Before I do that though, I'm going to get these other positive wires pulled out, or the level sensor wires. Okay, get that out of the way. Then we're gonna lay these right with this and use this connector here. So we actually have quite a bit of material, so I'm actually gonna trim these down. Okay. See how big the wires are supposed to be for these tabs? That's why I'm folding them. Typically you just get a terminal or a connector that is appropriately sized for the wire, but these ones are just really fat, so I'm going to soak up some of that extra space using this. Just like so. That's a good solid crimp there. You can give it a tug. It's not going to come out. Then we'll do the back portion. Okay, that is a solid connection there. Now, before we put it into the connector, we're going to see which one is positive, which one's negative. Negative is the brown, so we're going to get our connector here set up. So we want this to be on that side. Oops. That's in. I just need to grab a set of itty bitty pliers to yank it through because these wires are really, really small. Alternatively, I could also shove it through the back. Okay, it's in. That's in solid now. And we'll just repeat for the other. All right, that's on. We'll shove these into the connector and we'll zip tie all this stuff down to these little eyelets. That's what these little holes are there for. They're not there for weight reduction. So, and a quick tip for getting those through. Before you feed your zip tie through, just give it a little bit of a bend like this, right? And normally that'll help you. Well, that didn't work, so. We have the full radium hanger assembled. We have the factory fuel level sensor on. We have the factory fuel temp sensor on. Everything's fastened down with the zip ties, so it's not too tight. The wires can still move around a little bit, but it's not gonna, you know, impact anything. And the biggest thing to look for when you're setting these up is to just make sure that there's no wires that are gonna get caught on this. I've done a couple installs a long time ago when I was not very experienced. And after I would get it in the car, the level would be stuck at one position. So just make sure that you tidy everything, use zip ties, make sure everything's neat. That way this float never gets obstructed. So now I'm going to go back into the car real quick. I'm going to grab the rubber seal that's still stuck on the gas tank. I'm gonna set it onto here, and then we'll put this whole assembly down into the gas tank. If you're building a car that has a decent amount of mileage, these seals are really cheap to buy, new from Subaru. Do yourself a favor and just grab one, because a lot of times they get really dry rotted and then they'll leak, and there's nothing worse than having to redo an install. So, all right, now we can drop this whole assembly into the tank. Man, Radium stuff looks so good, dude. All right. The way that I do this is I kind of sneak the float down in there first, and then just kind of work the whole thing in. It's definitely a squeeze, but it does all fit. Same deal, just need to make sure that these connectors and hose ends on the fuel lines are out of the way. Okay, that's on. Now we can put this little tab right back and grab all of our nuts and fasten everything down. The next step we might have to wait for, because we didn't have the correct hardwire kit in stock. And the next step is definitely routing the hoses, running the fuel lines, stuff like that. So we might come back to that. It'll be still in the same video, but if you see me wearing a different shirt, that's why. Okay, that's on. That's a complete install on that. Last thing we're gonna do, that we can do right now, is we're gonna take this evap breather hose, we're gonna put it onto this barbed end right here. And it's actually not an evap breather hose, it's the transfer hose to bring fuel over from the other side of the tank. Now we need to run our return hose and our feed hose here. This is 8 AN, this is 6 AN. It's gonna be a little bit of a challenge. Like I said, it's really tricky to get big fuel hoses underneath the car from the top of the tank on these GDs, but thankfully we're working with a pretty rust-free chassis, so if I do have to drop the tank down a little bit, we shouldn't run into any broken fasteners or anything. We are going to continue on with the 07. We are going to start running the fuel lines. To do that, we need to get some things out of the way. Like I mentioned previously when we were doing the Radium install, passing an 8 AN fuel line through a GD is kind of a challenge. So we're gonna get through it together, you and me and Richard behind the camera, all three of us. Let's go. First things first, grab you some exhaust hanger tool. This one is from Blue Point or Matco. This one's from Matco, part number EHR383. Not on our website, but a fantastic tool to have. How they work is you just kind of slide the forked end behind the grommet, and then you just squeeze and it pops right off, just like that. Dusty, would you feature on this for a second?
I'll feature.
We'll feature. Dusty's gonna feature for a second. We just support the front end of the catback. All right, get that out of here. Okay, to lower the gas tank down, there are these 4 bolts that hold these straps up, right? Now we don't need to lower the gas tank a whole lot. We just need to get at least like an inch of room. So there's a hole in the subframe up here, right above the axle. I'm gonna sneak my ratchet up through there. There we go. And I'm just gonna loosen these. And since our subframe is still in place, I'm gonna just back these all the way out. If you have the subframe loose, there is a potential that the tank could fall down if you take these all the way out, so just be careful when you do it. Missed. Next. After we knock out this fuel system stuff, we get to do some really cool drivetrain stuff. That'll be in the next video though. And we got 2 more. These ones are real tricky to get to. Let me grab a 1/4 inch, see if that'll be better. Now that we have our tank drooped down, you can see we got quite a bit more room here. It's still gonna be a really tight squeeze. So let's move upstairs to the top side of the car and kind of see what we're working with. See if we need to get even more room. You see what I mean? I mean, there is not much room going on right here. But we are going to figure it out. All right, for our 80N feed, I have this little rubber cap on here so that the end doesn't get a bunch of crap on it while I'm shoving it through. But we have moved the tank down a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to feed this across the top here, over the saddle, and then have it come out the bottom on the driver's side. So basically what I end up having to do is just kind of getting it going and seeing if it works, seeing if it comes out the other side correctly. Which it seems like we're already off to a rough start. You know what? This is where we just have to go up and down over and over and over again, over and over and over again until we get it out. And then Richard, we have to do it again. All right, we successfully got the 8AN feed hose passed towards the passenger side. So what we're doing, since there's so little room towards the front of the tank, we're actually gonna route it back behind and kind of loop around like that. That way, when we raise the tank back up and strap everything down, we know that the hose isn't getting pinched or smashed. So we already passed it through. I have one end. I'm gonna throw a 90-degree hose end on it, and then we will do the return line after that. All right, same deal as before. We are just going to fray the braided section just a little bit so that we can get this lock collar on. And then I'm actually, since I don't have a bench to smack this on, I'm gonna grab a rubber mallet. There we go. Get this on here. Okay, same deal as before. I'm gonna tighten this down with the hose end facing the way that I want it to face, because sometimes when you crank these down and get them tight, the hose end doesn't like to swivel anymore. Right now it can kind of swivel. So I'm gonna get this set to right here, go grab a couple wrenches, and then we'll install that feed line. The confidence inspiring working on a really nice clean car like this, because if it had been an older, higher mileage chassis, I would not be comfortable dropping the subframe in the tank like we just did. Okay. Now we can spin this hose a little bit. Get it set down on there. If it was easy, everyone would do it, Richard. Okay, that's on there. And it is binding up a little bit, so we need to, when we stretch the hose out underneath the car again, we just need to rotate it a little bit so we know this isn't getting bound up. And we feed it up over this and down.
Is it posting motor in there or what?
Yeah. Okay. Now we got that. Soak some more up here. Okay. Okay. Now I just want to be sure that we're sitting on the outside of the tank here, because that is where it gets really, really tight. Okay. We'll lay that like that, and we'll string the rest of this up later. Right now, since we have the subframe droop, let's get our 6AN hose and get that routed. So again, we're using a 8AN feed and a 6AN return. The biggest reason that people step up to bigger fuel lines, obviously it's more fuel capacity, but also the factory lines are known to leak occasionally, and we don't want leaks. We want it to be all sealed up. So we got the hoses passed underneath the car. Now I'm just gonna put one more hose end on the return line, and then we will get everything cinched down to the hanger and start raising the subframe and the gas tank back up. While we're doing that, we're gonna move the lines around the whole time. That way we can be sure that they're moving freely and not getting bound up or pinched. See how it still moves? That's good. All right, I'm gonna throw the subframe bolts back in. Now we can lower this back down and we can start to get the gas tank back up. Now, fuel lines are ran. What we can do, just to ensure that we have really good flow, is we can do a little mock regulator over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go grab the fuel pressure regulator that we're gonna use for this car, and I'm going to throw a couple ends on these. And actually, you know what? I won't even do that. I'm just gonna power the pump on and make sure that we get good fuel flow through the feed. And the return moves way more than the feed, so I think that's gonna be just fine. Really the only issue we would have there is if the pressure was creeping up, but we're putting a really, really nice regulator on it, so it should be able to keep up with it. So let's grab a, well, I'll just put some into this fuel barrel here. Came out strong? Yeah? Okay. Good. What that also just did, we rolling? Okay. What that also just did was flush out our line on our feed line. So now that all the bit of fuel that we get through, as of right now, as long as we don't cut the line anymore, which we inevitably will have to, but at least we know now that that line is flushed out and it's clean. All right, so we got the Radium dual pump hanger assembled and installed in the car. We dropped the subframe and the fuel tank down and ran our fuel lines up to the front. Now we kind of have to wait on finishing up the fuel system until we get this put into the car, because we need to figure out where we're gonna put the fuel filter and how we're gonna route the fuel lines so that everything is away from heat sources and it flows nice. So that's gonna be the end of this episode. Be sure to keep that notification bell on for the next one, because we're getting started on it right now. We'll see you on the next one.